I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. Brought to you in part by Ralgrow. With $8 corn and cost of gains $1.40 plus a pound, producers need to find cheap weight gains. How about an extra 23 pounds for just $1.50 a head? Use Ralgrow implants. Visit ralgrow.com or visit with your Merck Animal Health representative for more information. Cattle correction. We've seen big gains on your cattle futures, especially feeder cattle, so far this week after the big drop off that we saw last week. But is that just a correction? Are we going to continue to see that? Your big gains in your feeder cattle have come with just about 20 cents lost in your corn market for your July contracts, which is not a whole lot, as volatile as they've been and as high as it is, but still we would like to see some more gains there, but we're happy with what's taken place so far. But early trade in your fed cattle arena has been near steady, maybe a little bit more if you look at the fringes there, but things are still looking pretty good as we continue to be in really tight supplies of market-ready cattle, but we know that we've got a lot more cattle coming up just around the corner. Box beef cutout values have been suffering of late, and that's unusual because normally this time of year they are on the rise because we've got those big early summer holidays, grilling holidays, Mother's Day, we've got Father's Day. We've got some big early summer holidays coming up, but with the economy suffering and inflation up and your price of gas so high, you know, maybe it's your consumers that are backing off of that product just a little bit, but they are suffering and continuing to go down right here at the time of the year where we normally see them continue to rise. But big cow kills have been the story so far this year and the last half of last year, but it has your cold storage of ground beef supplies restocked. So we'll see how that goes forward, but man, we have killed a lot of cows, 18% more than the same time a year ago, and we're still seeing that, even though we have seen moisture in the northern plains where we saw the worst part of the drought and your biggest sell-off of cows up there in South Dakota and eastern Montana and places like that. But starting to see some pretty good moisture fall across much of the central part of the U.S., especially your corn belt, and that's one reason your corn has backed off some, because we've seen really good moisture come across there. Down here in the southern plains it's been a little bit more spotty, but we have seen some moisture in the northern part of the Texas Panhandle. A lot of Oklahoma has seen some rain. The Oklahoma Panhandle has even seen some rain after those big fires that ravaged through that area just a couple of weeks ago. But I was in Hereford, Texas, giving a presentation, the one that I typically give, which talks about the need to maintain at least the amounts of negotiated fed cattle trade that we have right now, and the importance of your Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act. But had really good reception in that area, even though we have so many corporate feeders in that area. Of course, they don't attend a lot of the events that some of your smaller producers go to, but I wasn't fully aware of the hailstorm that hit that area on Sunday night. And I'd seen some reports of the hail and I thought it was pretty spotty, but it did affect several, as many as 10 of your major feedlots in that area, coming up through Summerfield, Texas, Hereford, Texas, and then across over to Bushland, Texas. But the hail was severe in that area, as big as apples, as it was reported. And a lot of cattle was displaced there, thousands of them that I've heard had pushed through the fences in some of those feedlot areas, and they've got a lot of pens to repair there as those cattle push through with that severe hail coming down. But in fact, a lot of the cattle that were on the show list are cattle that were ready to go. Your packers are not going to take those cattle in some of those areas because the hail was so severe that it has bruised those cattle to the point that your packers really don't want them, and then they're going to hold those cattle off for as much as a month until they kind of heal up from those bad hailstones that come down and struck those cattle. But it was very severe in that area, which was not widely reported. Let's talk about your board on Tuesday. June live cattle futures were up just 12 cents at 135.32. August was up 27 cents at 137.32. Your back months of your fed cattle were up 47 to as much as $1 on your farthest out back months. Feeder cattle, May feeder cattle was up 97 cents, now at 162.40 on the close. August, the all-important August, which hinges a lot of those big yearlings coming off those major graze out areas, or those major grass grazing areas like your Flint Hills and your Osage and places like that, up 220 at 176.27. Not as high as it was there a few months ago, up in the 180s, but getting up there pretty respectable again. Your back months, your feeder cattle, were unchanged on your furthest out months to as much as up $1.67 on those back months that are a little bit closer forward. Your grain futures were down. Corn was down 10.5 cents on the July contract there at 7.93. Beans down 14.75 cents a bushel at 16.30.5. Kansas City hard red winter wheat down 5.25 cents at 10.92 3/4. Fat cattle trade just starting to get going on Tuesday. Looks fairly promising for this week, and we may be able to maintain steady. Colorado actually printed and only 200 head, but it's significant that they printed, which means that a third packer has gone into Colorado and started buying some cattle, and the only thing they reported was some mixed cattle at 145 live, but that's nothing to sneeze at this early in the week. Iowa, 1,400 head confirmed sold on Tuesday from 144 to 145 live, which was in the range of last week. 230 dressed. Nebraska, about 2,000 head confirmed on Tuesday at 146 live and 232 dressed. Southern Plains did not confirm any sales negotiated, but there was widely reported bids of 141 in Kansas, but it was by a regional packer further north that was coming down there looking for some cattle, and those all-important regional packers that don't have all the sweetheart deals don't always have their needs covered, and when they're looking for cattle and they're looking for numbers and they're looking for quality, they're liable to go anywhere looking for those cattle to purchase. Box beef cutout values, as I mentioned earlier, have been let's talk about an auction that happened on Tuesday. And Stockman's Livestock in Yankton, South Dakota, an in-house sale barn that sells fed cattle, and not just a few. I mean, they had 1,500 and some cattle there, including a few cows there. But lots of fat cattle on offer there in Yankton, as they normally have. And your fed cattle sold from 144 to 148.25 on the conventional cattle. Your cattle that were non-implanted or drug-free, those program kind of cattle sold up to 158, and I'm not talking about singles, I'm talking about loads of cattle up as high as 158. So they're still wanting those cattle. Box beef cutout values were lower, like I mentioned earlier. Choice cuts down $3 on Tuesday afternoon, which is a big loss there at 259.55. Selects down 89 cents at 247.34. Slaughter running at a decent pace, but not as good as last week. So far this week, 237,000 cattle harvested up through Tuesday. That's down 13,000 from last week, but steady with the same week a year ago. Always on the feeder flash, every month we like to recognize a sale barn that is doing an awful good job for their customers in their area, and has been really having good sales. And this month, and it's sponsored by Zoetis, which we want to give them credit for that. They will come into those markets and offer some swag there, some free stuff from Zoetis, and give some of the employees and the people around those stockyards. But your Zoetis Market of the Month this month is the Montgomery, Alabama Stockyards. I mentioned to you last week they had that big board sale for the first time ever. They had that sale online with DV Auction, had over 90 loads of green grass yearling feeders there. They sold at a very comparable price with the central part of the United States near the 5-area feeding region, without the $10 to as much as $14 a hundred ride that it took to get them to those commercial feedlot areas. But Montgomery Stockyards is doing an excellent job there. They've got a heck of a good team there with owner Jerry Etheridge and Daryl Stokes, who's very important to that stockyard, and he's doing a lot of the work that it takes to get those videos put online so that they can offer those cattle to a worldwide web of interested people there. And then Wesley Grantham there, guy that I met, a young fella that does an excellent job, has a lot of contacts in that part of the country there. And then they've got a whole team there, and they've got one of the best clerks there at that sale barn that I've ever worked with. But congratulations to Montgomery Stockyards for being the Zoetis Market of the Month. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV Auction late in the day on Tuesday sitting at 154.58. That's up 43 cents. So we had some Northern Plains sales on Tuesday with some impressive quotes, and I've got a whole bunch of individual quotes to give you that'll kind of raise your eyebrows there. But I want to go ahead and talk about some of this. Don't forget, here today on Wednesday in the afternoon starting at 4:30, Joplin Regional Stockyards is having their special cow and bull sale. They've got a ton of bred cows lined up for that sale. They've also got a limousine ranch dispersal that's been in business for 52 years since they first introduced limousine cattle to the United States, and they are having a complete dispersal. So it's a good opportunity for you guys to get in on some of that good seed stock and the limousine breed there, plus a bunch of bred cows. Good replacement stock there. You can view and bid that sale on dvauction.com starting at 4:30 in the afternoon. Talk about your big feeder cattle sales on Tuesday. Ozarks Regional Stockyard in West Plains, Missouri, just 1,700 head. That's a lighter run for them in south central Missouri there, but very muddy. They had a lot of moisture there last week, the latter part of last week in that area, and hard to get cattle out. But just 1,700 head through the ring there. Another 300 head plus on their in-house video that they do with DV Auction there, and Steve Anderson does such a good job with those. But the market there, steers sold steady to $4 lower. They had a really good sale last week. Heifers sold steady to $3 higher with a good selection of 6-weight heifers there in the run. But pretty good sale there at West Plains. How about Kimball Livestock Exchange in Kimball, South Dakota? 2,300 head of feeders went through there. As you can see from this automated market report through Cattle Market Central with DV Auction, you can see that the trends from last week's good offering were sharply higher, especially on calves, but the biggest numbers were in your heavier feeder cattle. And look at these best tested weights of yearling feeder steers. 571 head of your 8-weight feeder steers there, averaged 873 pounds, with a weighted average price on all those 8 weights at Kimball on Tuesday at $158.63. 670 head of your 9-weight yearling feeder steers in Kimball, South Dakota, averaged 922 pounds at $152.79. Several individual quotes that were impressive. How about Beaver County Stockyards, advertiser here and customer at DV Auction? They had a really good sale on Tuesday despite the dry conditions that they've had for a long time, but they've had some recent rains after those big fires. But big stick out sale in Beaver, Oklahoma was 109 head, 800 pound steers at $162 in the southern plains and the drier region there. But I told you they were going to have that fundraiser for your Beaver County firefighters in that region, and you got to give Jess Slatton, the owner there, credit, because he was bound and determined to do something for those local firefighters in that region. He had some grassland that got burnt up in that part of the country there. A lot of his customers have grassland that burn up, and it burned a ton of ground up there. But their goal was to raise $100,000. In fact, they raised $172,000 at the Beaver County Stockyards for the Beaver County firefighters up there in no man's land, eastern edge of the Oklahoma Panhandle. That is why it's so important to keep our local auction markets viable, guys, and we've got to continue to keep price discovery, competition in your markets and your feeder cattle markets, but it's got to start at the fed cattle part so that we continue to have price transparency on your feeder cattle all the way down to your lighter calves. Some other individual quotes. How about Winter Livestock, La Junta, Colorado? That's John Campbell's sale up there. 70 head of 686-pound steers bring $177.50. You think it ain't dry in eastern Colorado? How about a market we've never talked about before? Premier Livestock in Withee, Wisconsin. Showed up on Cattle Market Central there with an individual quote of 54 head, 653-pound steers, bring $180.50 way up there in Wisconsin, guys. How about Miles City Livestock Commission? That part of the country in eastern Montana was extremely dry. They've had some moisture, they had some late snows, but it wasn't a drought buster. But still, how about 50 head, 517-pound steer calves in Miles City, Montana, bring $210 a pound. How about Gordon Livestock Market in Gordon, Nebraska? 80 head, 742-pound steers bring $172.50. But the biggest quote that I saw anywhere in your Rowgrow top quote for the day come out of Unionville Livestock Market, Unionville, Missouri. That's extreme north central Missouri up there in the Green Hills. The Rockin' R cattle out of Lucerne, Missouri. They had 252 head of yearling feeders there, backgrounded just right, weighed 892 pounds on the average, and bring $159.35. That's your feeder flash for Wednesday.